On count one in the indictment, the accused ought to have been found guilty of murder on the basis that he had fired the fatal shots with criminal intent in the form of dolus eventualis. As a result of the errors of law referred to, and on a proper appraisal of the facts, he ought to have been convicted not of culpable homicide on that count, but of murder. In the interest of justice, the conviction and the sentence imposed in respect thereof must be set aside and the conviction substituted with a conviction of the correct offence.
Well, Justice Leach said that although the court overturned the verdict of culpable homicide and replaced it with one of murder, Judge Thokozile Masipa's reputation is not being questioned. He said she conducted herself well during the trial, despite the glare of the international media. He added that the fact that this court determined that certain mistakes were made should not be seen as an adverse comment upon her competence and ability. The court has referred the matter back to the trial court for appropriate sentencing. Leach said the time Pistorius has already spent in prison should be taken into account. Well, for more now, let's cross live to our reporter, Griselda Lewis. She's at the Supreme Court. Griselda, good afternoon to you. So from manslaughter to murder, he will now have to return to court for a new sentence to be decided. But Griselda, what happens to Pistorius in the immediate? Does he get taken straight back into custody?
Well, as you rightly pointed out, Natasha, that now this conviction of culpable homicide has been overturned. Oscar Pistorius is guilty of murder. What will happen now is that this matter will be referred back to the High Court for pre-sentencing arguments. It's highly unlikely that that's going to happen this year. Of course, that is also guided by the High Court registry in Pretoria. But my sources tell me that a date is highly unlikely to be given for these pre-sentencing arguments this year. But what we do know is that the National Prosecuting Authority will not ask that Oscar Pistorius be incarcerated at this time. They will wait for those pre-sentencing arguments to take place, and then whatever sentence that court finds is fit for Oscar Pistorius on that guilty verdict will then be handed down appropriately. But definitely a victory for the National Prosecuting Authority. We did speak to them a little bit earlier on. Let's hear what they have to say.
As an institution, we welcome the judgment of the Supreme Court of Appeal. It affirms our contention that the trial court judge erred in her application and interpretation of the law. We believe that the judgment is in the interest of justice.
All right, the NPA there, Griselda, but let's get more understanding on what happened today in court. You have a legal expert with you to take us through this.
Well, that's right, Natasha. Before I speak to the legal expert, just to bring you up to speed with the latest, also, we've just received a statement from Oscar Pistorius' family. They've indicated that they will not be commenting on the judgment as yet. As per the statement they also released yesterday, they've indicated again today that they will confer with their legal team on a way forward, and then they will certainly comment on this issue. But let me chat now to Estienne Ferreira about the proceedings inside the Bloemfontein Supreme Court of Appeal today. This certainly seems to be a victory for the state, Estienne, in this regard. Does this in any way state that Judge Thokozile Masipa may have got it completely wrong?
Yes, like I said previously, I don't think she had got it completely wrong, but she did unfortunately miss a lot of crucial aspects in this case, which led to a finding of the culpable homicide. But as pointed out by Justice Leach in this matter, he pointed out what she missed, and not to hold the axe over her head, but she did miss out. She did miss out on a couple of extremely important points, but luckily it was corrected here in the appeal court today.
What does it say about perhaps the versions of Oscar Pistorius? We heard very critically from Justice Leach saying that even till this point, to this day, there is no clear indication of what Oscar Pistorius' version of events is. He changed it several times. Did the court in Pretoria choose a version for Oscar Pistorius?
Yes, if you look at the versions that he gave the court, I think he gave 3 or 4 different versions. And he kept on changing his versions because you cannot stick with one version. You must stick with one version. If you do not stick with the version, you're gonna go on and go on and go on and not make sense to anybody. So if I won't go as far as to say that the court chose a version, but with what the court was given, they made up their mind with the versions that they received from him.
Crucially also with regard to some of the crucial evidence that Justice Leach had found that Judge Thokozile Masipa had totally disregarded. With regard to that, we talk about Chris Mangena's a testimony as well, the ballistics expert. We saw Justice Leach say that the bathroom was so small, whoever was behind the door certainly could not have escaped the shots that Oscar Pistorius had fired through that door. But in terms of the crucial evidence, how critical was it to reach this finding at the Supreme Court of Appeal to overturn this culpable homicide conviction? How crucial was that?
It was extremely crucial. If we listen to the judgment that Justice Leach gave, it was one of the main facts that he used, the ballistics expert, in his report, stating that there was no place for the deceased to hide. So the shots that was fired wasn't fired to scare off the intruder or the deceased inside of the bathroom. It was merely fired to kill the person in the bathroom. So to have that disregarded in the main case it's appalling to think that such crucial evidence to a case such with magnitude of this can be just discredited. That doesn't make sense.
Is this precedent setting in perhaps another case regarding dolus eventualis, because that had been one of the crucial aspects that needed to be clarified by this court?
Of course, it was clarified by this court, by Justice Leach. There's no, you cannot say that you do not understand dolus eventualis. I think the man on the street can understand dolus eventualis now, as explained by Justice Leach. So for sure, the president has begun now here by this judgment, and I think it's a good thing.
All right, thank you very much for your time there. Estienne Ferreira, who's been keeping us company here, cracking down all the legalities of this case, certainly. But we've not heard much from the Steenkamp family at this point. It's unlikely that they will comment at this point. But when we did speak to June Steenkamp a bit earlier on, Natasha, she did indicate that she was expecting that justice would be served. Certainly, some would say that this is certainly what the Steenkamp family was waiting for. And while our camera person was recording June Steenkamp when she was leaving the court, somebody had overheard her say finally. So I guess that finally could be interpreted as the day that she believes that justice was served.
All right, Criselda, thank you very much for that update. That's our reporter Criselda Lewis, live from the Supreme Court of Appeal in Bloemfontein. We will have more updates for you throughout the day from the Supreme Court in this rather historic event that's taken place at the Supreme Court in Bloemfontein.